Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning for those of you joining from Canada, late morning. I am Nigel Miller, and I have the distinct pleasure of being your host for the next hour. I'm conscious that for many, this is the other major event going on in London right now. So thank you so much. We're very grateful for you joining and choosing culture over football. This wonderful hour is brought to you thanks to a collaboration between the Canada-UK Foundation and the Canada-UK Chamber of Commerce. It's with the support of our corporate sponsor, the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce, CIBC. We're also grateful to be in this beautiful space, Canada House, adjacent to Trafalgar Square. We thank our patron, His Excellency, Ralph Goodale, for allowing us to be here today. A quick word about the two organizations. For 50 years this year, the foundation, the Canada-UK Foundation, has been guided by a single, simple vision: promoting Canada in the UK through education. We achieve this by funding scholarships and research exchanges between Canada and the UK, by showcasing Canadian talent here in the UK, and by building collaborations between people with similar aims in both the two countries. We're charter members of the Canada-UK Chamber of Commerce, which is actually Europe's oldest bilateral chamber and London's largest Canada-UK business network. Over the next hour, we're going to get to know four dynamic, talented, younger Canadians, each one accomplished in their field. Those of you joining, however, on Zoom, you will have the opportunity to ask questions yourselves. We've got the Q&A function enabled on our technology here, so don't be shy. Pop your questions in the chat, and we'll try to get to them all. I have a number of questions, but I'll forsake some of them if there's great ones in the chat coming from you, and you'll hear the answers live and direct. So let's get started. We're here in Canada House with singer-songwriter STORRY to my far right there. She scored her first Juno Award nomination right before the pandemic took hold, and then actually amid the pandemic recorded and released a new album, Interlude 19. She moved to the UK during that time in search of new opportunities, and in April, once again, she received a second Juno nomination for the Adult Contemporary Album of the Year called Channel 3, The Come Up. Soprano Sarah Parkin, sitting to my immediate right, she specializes in new music and contemporary opera. She was the winner of the prestigious English National Song Competition in 2013, and she has since performed in festivals and theaters up and down this country, as well as collaborated with composers across Europe since moving to the UK from Canada in 2010. And then the handsome man in the middle here, Cesar Corrales, was born in Mexico, raised in Canada. His career spanned starring roles as young Billy in the Chicago and Toronto productions of Billy Elliot, to dancing with the American Ballet Theatre Studio Company, the English National Ballet, and now the Royal Ballet at the Opera House just around the corner here in London, where he was recently promoted to principal dancer this spring. And then on Zoom, you'll see there, I hope, Cecilia Livingston. She's joining our panel virtually from Toronto. She is a multi-award-winning composer. She's widely recognized for composing music for voice. She's in residence at the world-renowned Glyndebourne House in East Sussex, England. She's also a Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada postdoctoral fellow in music at King's College, London. So those are our four special guests today. We're going to hear from them all now. Listen, guys, it's incredible to have you here live in Canada House. Thanks for being with us. You made it through all the football traffic. I hope it wasn't too difficult, just barely. There's noise booming outside here with fans watching the game, but we're here safe and sound. And wow, you look extraordinarily fit and healthy. Some of us aren't so much. We've been through a pandemic. How is it that you've kept so fit and healthy, probably mentally and physically? Maybe, Cesar, I'll start with you. What's your secret?
Well, honestly, it's been very difficult. I've been training in my kitchen in Soho, so it's a tiny space. Usually us ballet dancers, our routine is to do a ballet class in the morning. So that's us at the bar, just moving our legs, doing exercises. And then normally we're in the studio jumping and turning. So obviously I couldn't manage to do all of that in the kitchen, but I did the best I could. And I just had to keep discipline and just follow the routine. And we ended up doing Zoom ballet classes, which I never thought would happen ever.
Or work.
Yeah. So luckily I managed to just keep that up. Obviously I didn't stay in the same shape I would be, but I managed to keep something.
That's amazing. And anyone else got any secrets on that front for us?
Not really. I think with singing, sometimes you can put it away and then come back to it. And sometimes, having a break, I don't know how it is for you, Story, but having a break usually does me some good. And the first bit of the pandemic did me some good to have a break. And then, but as you said, Cesar, it really was a lot about self-discipline, which I didn't show very much of at the very beginning.
Join the gang on that one. Listen, you've all got tremendously disparate backgrounds in dance, song, opera, etc. I do notice, though, that you've all got one thing in common. You started really early in life. Is that important? Maybe, Sarah, you could start on that. How important is that?
Well, I think in many disciplines, probably not ballet to the extent that Cesar is doing it, but in many disciplines you can start later. For me, it was incredibly influential in the rest of my life. I was in a French immersion program in Ontario, just north of Toronto. And in the French immersion program, you have to speak French every day. And I was painfully shy. I was incredibly anxious. And in grade 1, my teacher just despaired for me. And she had a meeting with my parents and said, if she doesn't start talking, like, she's going to fail. So we have no idea how much she's progressing because she doesn't speak. So you need to do something with her. And my aunt was taking singing lessons, and so I started taking singing lessons with my wonderful teacher, my first teacher, Irene Illick, and it started a whole community. And so that was how I gained social skills. That was how I learned how to speak in public. Not even just singing, not even just performing, but and it actually helped my whole education. So for me, it was a very wholesome experience, and I think I think music is important, and I think movement is important for the enrichment of the lives of all children, frankly. But for me, that's what I gained from it.
Cesar, I'm going to come back to you on this one, actually, when we get to you specifically, because Cesar, as I said, he started at, I think it was 4 years old on stage, so we'll come back to that. I'd actually like to turn, though, to you on this one, Story. I'm a Canadian in London myself. I've always taken a great deal of pride of being a Canadian here. The Canada-UK Foundation really celebrates being a Canadian in the UK and what it is to be a Canadian. I just wonder, any of you can answer this, but I'd love to start with you, Story. Is there something special, something different about being a Canadian here in the UK that you could call out?
I mean, I'm relatively new here, and I think that both countries have similarities that I enjoy because I kind of feel like I'm home in a sense, being in London, it's so diverse, and coming from, my parents being immigrants to Canada, my mother's Lebanese, my dad's Greek, there's always kind of this amalgamation of different cultures that you find in both countries, and that I really love.
Brilliant. Anyone else got, Sarah, you've been here longer. Cecilia, you would typically be here, of course. You're on Zoom. Anyone else have an experience of being a Canadian in London that you think is unique? What would you say to someone in a pub if they said, well, you're Canadian, what's so special about that?
Well, I think I have to say there's a similarity to, Story here. I feel like it is in a way representing the world. In my case, my parents are Cuban. I was born in Mexico, and my brother was born in Canada. So you can imagine being in the airport when the family was traveling, all of these different passports. And I feel like, in a way, being Canadian, you are representing the world, because there's just so much diversity. And, you know, everyone in Canada, in a way, has, you know, somewhere else where they've been, and their families come from other places. But in Canada, you know, we all get together. And then, in a way, yeah, that's what we represent when we go out. If that makes sense, any sense.
I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I'm going to switch gears here, and I'm going to start with you. I'd like to get you in on this one, Cecilia, if I can. My own son, Graham, is an aspiring artist and musician, so I know, you know, a bit from experience how hard it is to make a living you know, in culture, in the arts, anywhere, frankly. You really need to work really hard. Do you think, or just give us a sense of how well Canada and the UK are doing to promote and support the arts? And maybe also any recommendation you can give to those of us who are anxious as ordinary citizens to support the arts as best we can.
Well, it's been really interesting to work in both countries, both of which have, you know, strong traditions of public funding for the arts, which is incredibly valuable to artists, and really, I mean, in my own opinion, is what allows me to experiment and grow as an artist. I've looked at, you know, I'm watching what, say, the Canada Council of the Arts has done during the pandemic to support artists and to revitalize the arts in a moment when I think the populations of both countries are realizing how much we've turned to art for the sort of nourishment of our souls during this past year of incredible disconnection. So what I would say to people who are joining us today, absolutely the best thing that you can do, in my own opinion, is to support our work. Buy tickets, buy our albums, preferably not through Spotify so that people actually get paid. And come out to our events and be curious, particularly about new work. Sometimes I think people who, you know, are maybe not quite as familiar with the art scene are a little bit wary of contemporary work and things that are right at the cutting edge. But if you come to us with an open mind, take part in what we're doing, tell us what you think about it, that's really how all of our art forms continue to grow, and it's incredibly valuable to us as artists to have that engagement with you. That's what keeps us going. So if you're there alongside with us, that's the best kind of support that you can share with us.
Brilliant, great advice. Anyone else got any thoughts on that before we get a little bit more personal?
I think she nailed it.
She did kind of.
Wonderfully inspiring.
She really did. All right, well, Cecilia, thank you. I'm going to come back to you in a moment. We are going to get more personal now, and we are going to hear and see some performances. I know everyone's looking forward to that. So, STORRY. Yes. Your music, gosh, it explores soul, hip-hop, R&B. There's even, I think, a slice of your opera roots in it as well. It just feels to me that your music is so broadly appealing that I couldn't, maybe perhaps others could categorize it. Maybe you don't want it categorized. Your early reviewers called your music reggae. In fact, I think that's what your first Juno Award nomination was in the category of.
That's right.
Can you give us a sense of how you define, if you can, define your music today?
Sure. I mean, I guess I would say my music is genreless. It probably falls under the soul category simply because of my voice. I've tried singing all different kinds of songs, and even if it's a pop song, I somehow, just because I'm singing it, it becomes soul. So I think that's why most people categorize me in that genre, like R&B soul. But for me, art is about storytelling, and so I don't like to kind of box it in and make it about a specific genre. I like to explore boundaries, and That's why I kind of infuse all these different genres in my storytelling, because it really is about what is the best way to tell the story.
Brilliant. Now, you've had classical training, I think. So tell me, I'll ask two questions here.
Sure.
But it's really about, you had classical training, but you're also an artist. So I don't know what training you had there. Give us a sense of maybe the most important elements of your training. How did you develop your skills?
Sure. I mean, I was self-taught basically growing up. I've been singing into a microphone since I was 3 years old, singing the ABCs, so I actually don't know my life without singing. And it was only when I got into Cégep, which is like college, that I discovered classical music, and my teacher was like, oh, you should, study opera. And so I did for a very short time. Sadly, I didn't get to finish my opera studies at the University of Toronto, but my life took a turn, and I ended up being coerced into the sex industry, and I was abused. And during that time was when I was really actually depressed, and my music wasn't in my control anymore. My partner at the time had control over the music, and so I decided that I was gonna start painting as an outlet. I didn't actually know I was an artist, like a visual artist. I thought I was just gonna, do some fun swirls on a canvas, and it turned out that I was not half bad. So I started selling my paintings. My second painting I sold for like $1,800, and people were like, what?
Wow.
This is your second painting? How could you sell it for that much? And I was like, I don't know. So that was a fluke. And then I got into directing music videos and did a clay animation, which kind of combined my artistry, like music and visual art and film and storytelling. And that was really out of desperation as well. Initially, it was because I couldn't find directors. I didn't have the funding. And so I had to just figure it out. And I'm so glad that I did, because now that I know I have all of that inside of me.
So I'm going to build on what you've started there. Your name is probably quite apt. And it's a deliberate choice, I believe. Your name, STORRY. You're not even 30, but your story, what you've been through, the words I would use to describe it would be resilience, reinvention, courage, and we find those themes in your music all the way through. As you give us maybe a little bit more sense of some of the things you've been through, tell us and help us to introduce the piece of music that we're about to see, your inspiration specifically for that.
Sure. Well, all of my music comes from my lived experience, and I believe that musicians, all artists, are like antennae, and when we are in the zone, I guess, you're kind of transmitting this thing that feels like it's not even from you, it's coming through you. And I believe that art is meant to push culture forward, and that it's our responsibility. So that's why I choose to tell my story in my music, and not in my music as well. I believe that stories, like, we are all made up of stories, and that is our perspective on the universe. And with all of these slivers of stories, we're able to see more of the truth. So this next song that I'm performing is called A Lost Find, and this song actually wrote itself. So I was jamming with my buddy who's playing the keys, Tom, and I was making up the lyrics and the melody, and he was playing the piano, And by the end of it, you'll hear that big long note at the end. I was in tears. And we were recording it on my voice memo. And I said, we have to learn exactly what that is. We're not changing anything. And so that's the song that you're going to hear.
Brilliant. Well, let's run it now.
Flying high, terrified till it goes through. Say goodbye to this heart, say goodbye and then sing a soft tune. I've been looking left and looking right, trying to find a love that's foolproof. Where I'm looking, things don't happen overnight. I'm not sure that it's true. And how about you? Love, where you find me soon. Love, where you find me soon. Planted a seed in my heart, now it's looking like this flower will never bloom. I've been searching for the way to turn dried petals into sweet perfume. I've been lost inside this maze between love and pain and losing my pride. Will you find me a place in your heart before I die?
I don't know about the rest of you, but I've kind of got goosebumps.
Yeah, definitely.
That is scary, scary good. That really, really beautiful, haunting, stunning. And I saw Cecilia, I'm about to chat with you. Your reaction was, I saw you closing your eyes. It's very emotional. So I know we'll have probably, I see there are some questions coming through. We'll take some time towards the end to ask those as well. I just want to make sure we get to all of you now. And Cecilia, I am going to turn it to you and to Sarah, because what we're going to enjoy next is a collaboration between the two of you. And I'm sorry, Cecilia, that you're not able to join us here in the beautiful Canada House. It is an irony, kind of, that you're doing your artist in residence at Glyndebourne and coinciding that with COVID and the pandemic. But maybe that's a good way to start, is tell us a bit, if you can, about what it is to be an artist in residence, what that's entailed for you during this year of turbulence and uncertainty.
Well, I mean, I think in the best of years, an artist residency is a wonderful thing because it provides a sort of community for an artist, particularly in composition. Depending on composers' different practices, that can involve a lot of solitary work time. It certainly does in my own practice. So having a sort of institutional family around one is a wonderful, supportive and nurturing thing in the best of years. And in this recent worst of years, it's been even more valuable and supportive than I would have even imagined it to be. I mean, we've had this wonderful project to work on for February 22. It's a full-scale opera, which has been a fantastic way to kind of stay positive and stay connected and to believe in the resurgence of new work after the pandemic, and that we will all be back together to make live art in the same space. So it's been incredibly supportive to have sort of Glyndebourne around me, both literally and virtually, during this time. And I've also had the really good luck of being a resident artist with a company who's been a leader in making socially distanced performances work, in making outdoor performances work. Glyndebourne's really been at the vanguard of continuing to offer the experience of live work to their audiences throughout this time. So it's been a wonderful learning opportunity for me in that way. I've been able to see how their sort of close-knit, flexible, adaptable kind of family energy has allowed them to respond to the incredible challenges of this year.
So you made reference there to work that's coming up, and Glyndebourne is going to be performing your new opera in February. Can you give us a bit more of a sense of what that will look like, a bit more detail, so we can look forward to it?
Yeah, this is a really neat project. It's called Pay the Piper, and it's a retelling of the Pied Piper of Hamelin's story. And the thing that I'm most excited about, there's sort of two things. The first is that it involves a huge chorus of children and young people from the local community around Glyndebourne. So it's just going to be the most joyful way, I think, to make work coming out of this pandemic, is to be with this huge group of young people and all of their energy and enthusiasm. And the second thing about it that's really cool is that we're going to be performing it in Glyndebourne's theatre, but instead of having it on the stage in the sort of way that we would expect of opera, it's actually going to be performed in the stalls space with all of the seats taken out. So the audience who comes is going to have a completely unique experience of Glyndebourne's very famous theater and with its incredible acoustics. So there's going to be an opportunity to experience that space and sound in that space in a totally new way, and I think a way that's going to let us tell this really spooky, funny, strange story in a really surprising way. So I do hope people will come and see this quite magical thing that we're making.
Oh, brilliant. Look forward to that. So in addition to being what you've described, you're a working composer, if I could call it that. Your work has been heard in so many places, including the Toronto Symphony Orchestra, among many others. You're also a respected academic in your own right. As I said before, You've got your PhD and postdoctoral fellowships to your credit. Are these two very different worlds, or are you able to merge them somehow?
I mean, they've certainly come to be sort of two sides of the same coin for me, though I know people sort of give me like weird looks when they learn that I do both of these things. I think the reason it works for me, and it's leading to sort of strong work on both sides, is that I can bring my experience as a creator to my academic work. My research is about contemporary opera, which is what I mostly make, so I'm really delighted to draw attention to that in academia, where it sometimes, doesn't get a lot of discussion. And I find that my research gives me tools for articulating what it is that I'm doing creatively. So, for example, I'm working on a chapter for the Cambridge Companion to Composition, which is about adaptation and composition. And this comes out of thinking about opera and adaptation. Tons of operas are adaptations. In fact, our Pay the Piper at Glyndebourne is an adaptation. So I've been really interested in thinking about how composers adapt and how we tell stories, some of them over and over centuries on our opera stages. So I'm finding ways to both do that creatively and academically, and for each of those sort of fields of work to nourish and inform each other.
Brilliant. So we're going to hear, Cecilia, one of your pieces performed by Sarah in a moment. We're going to hear it, we're going to see it. Sarah, you are bridging both the working musician and teaching worlds as well.
Yeah, it's one of the great things that you can do in the UK that I think it might be starting to happen in Canada, where they have private instrumental teachers in schools, and so you can work during the day and then rehearse at night, or just as what we might call our day job. But it's been really wonderful working with children, I end up doing quite a lot of outreach and community work, and that often involves a lot of creativity. I did quite a few sessions with Opera Hall in Park, their Inspire program, where I wrote my own sort of adaptations of like silly songs with words to famous classical pieces that I then taught over Zoom with like different costumes, that type of thing. And so it involves actually a lot of creation and research, which I really enjoy.
Well, I'll put a plug in here for the Canada UK Foundation auction, which is our first. Right. Sarah offered as a prize a singing lesson. We thank you for that. There's a bidding war going on for it, so you may have seen that. So may the best person win, and the person, of course, who donates the most. So your career has focused somewhat on contemporary music. It's given you a rich experience in what you've referred to as experimental performance.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that? So
it's what Cecilia does. It's taking what a composer like Cecilia does and then creating it. It's as a live performance. It also involves, taking graphic scores, which is basically like pictures on a piece of paper. And sometimes the composer gives you a legend, and sometimes you just kind of have to figure out what you think they might have meant by what they wrote. Sometimes it's improvisation, where someone says improvise on a theme of emotions, and so you have to go from rage to ecstasy in, 2 minutes, and like think of a musical way, performative way to do that. But it's something where I use my whole body as a movement person, not a professional ballet dancer, but as a movement person, and a gestural artist. And I find that I can take everything that I've done throughout my whole life, in terms of like all the ballet classes that I've done, or dance or movement, but also different types of music theater singing, different types of opera techniques, and everything sort of culminates together in whatever we present in the moment. And it's working closely with composers as you create something with them. or doing research and development for a piece that you might not end up performing in, or for a piece that you might end up performing in, or for a piece that doesn't necessarily get taken up. But it's a different thing every day, which is, I think, what I love most about it.
So I'm going to get you to dig into this just a little bit more
Sure.
when you introduce the piece that we're going to see in a moment. Before we do that, you said at the outset in our chat that one of your earliest influences was a French class, and I think you've become a part of the French community in London here. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, actually, it's in Canada, we have a lot of really incredible French diction teachers. And so when you go to university or you study opera at a higher level, you end up doing diction classes in all the different languages, like typically Italian, French, and German, and English song occasionally. In Canada, obviously, there are many fantastic lyric diction French coaches, but when I came to study here in Manchester, I found that there was something sort of sorely lacking, and so I started. Originally, it was me doing volunteer hours for my conservatoire. For a bursary that they had given me, I was coaching people and telling them how to sing with good lyric French diction. And it turns out in London, there's basically one woman who does it across the city, at the Royal Opera House, at all the conservatoires. There's one woman who's working as a French diction coach. So most recently, I was assisting her in a virtual opera performance of Ravel's L'Enfant et les Sortilèges, which came out with Vopra last year during the pandemic. Last year during the pandemic, and it's something that I do sort of ad hoc with singers, just to try and connect them to the French language a little bit better. And I'm working my way up on that. That's another side job.
Brilliant. Finding your community is so important.
Yeah.
Can you, before we turn to your performance, can you just tell us a little bit about what you're working on now?
Yeah, so recently we released a film of what was meant to be an immersive opera, so a bit like what Cecilia was describing, an immersive opera called A Kinder Society, and this was with British composer Amy Bryce. So she was supported from a grant with the Stiftung Kunst und Musik für Dresden in Germany, and we were meant to go to Germany, obviously, to perform this immersive piece of opera, improvisatory theater, but alas, with the pandemic, that did not happen. So we made a film version of it, and it's essentially improvisations on sort of childlike themes. So I get to explore, like I said, a wheel of emotions, or there's 2 minutes of me just improvising with listening to a shell, like the sound that comes out of the shell, or toys that you pick out of a box. So that was one of the biggest projects, and that was something that was written for me specifically, which was really exciting to do. And then my own projects, I'm working on a movement, a type of movement choreography with a choreographer called Monica Nikolaidis. And on the side as well, I'm working on an Icelandic-Canadian recital with Icelandic accordionist Jonas Askersson.
So you're not doing much, really,
No,
at all, I guess.
No. I'm really looking forward to having July off so that I can actually practice.
So we've seen Stories, the spellbinding performance. I've seen this one. Be prepared, we're going to be swept away again. The piece you're performing today, Calypso, was written by Cecilia. Before we see it, can you just tell us a bit about this piece?
Sure.
Prepare us a bit.
So Calypso is the nymph from Homer's Odyssey, and also a demigod, I believe, so she was immortal. And she was the one who swept Ulysses onto her island and held him there, as Cecilia says in her foreword in the score, against his will, but not really, for 7 years while he was trying to get back to his wife Penelope. It also has a sister piece from the point of view of Penelope, which we're not performing today. But so this is Calypso, the nymph, who is after Ulysses has gone and she's yearning for him to come back. It has jazz influences, it has Chopin piano-like influences, and it takes some influence from the jazz standard Stormy Weather as well, because she's willing for the rain to come back so that he can get shipwrecked onto her island again.
Okay.
She promised him immortal life and he didn't want it.
Let's, without further ado, Tommy, let's go there. And just before we turn it over to you, Cesar, you're probably wondering the same thing as I am. So for a composer, what's it like to see your composition performed? Just in a word?
Completely strange. It's like it's a part of my heart that is in someone else's body. Very peculiar, and that is the magic of the job.
Brilliant. And as someone who can't stand to hear my own voice, what's it like to now see yourself performing and hearing yourself?
I mean, I really dislike it, but I think most people do to an extent. But this piece is something incredibly special, and I love performing it.
Yeah, it's spectacular. Really, really, really special.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Cecilia.
Thank you.
Thank
Cecilia.
you.
It's brilliant. So we're going to turn to our last guest now. Cesar, welcome again. We're going to see your performance actually straight away, so we're going to reverse the order a bit here. Can you just tell us a bit more about what we're about to see?
Yeah, so you're going to see a ballet called Les Corsaires. So I think instead of something like Giselle, where there's a lot of women, it's more, slow and lyrical. This is more men jumping, turning. So in a way, for young boys and people who don't know too much about ballet, I usually tell them to go see these kind of ballets first, so that they can get a feel of it and they can see that in some ways it is sort of similar to, playing, jumping, all those things that, that's just exciting. And usually, yeah, it's just what makes people just excited to go see ballet, see men in ballet, and have a different way of seeing ballet.
Brilliant. Yeah. Thank you for the intro. Let's run the video. So your ballet journey is not a conventional one, as I understand them, I guess. Your parents were performers with the Cuban Ballet, then in Canada with the Winnipeg Ballet. You're a Montreal Canadiens fan, I want to get that in there. It's been a good year for you. So you spent some time in Montreal. I recall reading that you didn't actually join the Canadian National Ballet until you were actually age 11. And that your audition video, as I wrote my notes here, was rather advanced for someone your age. Could you tell us a little bit about what it was like having, both parents dancing that kind of shaped you? It's back to that earlier question about starting early. You started at 4, went from there.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the older I get, the more I realize how fortunate I was to have my parents understand exactly, what I do, and to have people take me through the right path and to support me no matter what. And really, it's the only thing I remember, even before, walking or anything, it was just dancing, and there's, footage of my mom just filming me and me not knowing how to walk yet and just jumping and trying to do like a tour and trying to turn. And I just remember being able to come into the theater to watch my parents dance and to watch my father, jump on stage and turn. And I feel like it was just something that I was copying. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what I was doing. You know, it was just fun for me. So instead of, you know, going out to the park to play football, which I loved, you know, dancing around at home and putting on the radio and just improvising and just making movement up. That was my fun time. That was my playtime. So just slowly, my parents knew how to guide me because they've been in it for so long, and they didn't want to rush me to put me straight into a school. So I think normally, you know, kids go into ballet schools at age 5, 6, you know. I didn't. I actually, you know, was playing football. I was doing gymnastics, and I was just dancing at home. And it wasn't until I was 11 when my mom told me, okay, so if you want to take this seriously now and you want it to be your profession, then, you know, now is the time to really study it and go to a school. So my audition video for Canada's National Ballet School was me actually just improvising in the studio and going crazy. Just
it obviously worked.
Yeah, because my parents did say he has no ballet training, so he hasn't been to like any sort of academy where he stood at a bar and learned the basics, first position, second position. I didn't know any of that. I just wanted to jump and turn and do what I saw. And so yeah, that, I guess it kind of worked. Yeah, that's the way I was raised.
So your journey is just, I mean, so inspiring, and looking back at all of the things, the performances you've done. You were in live theater as young Billy. You've been with three ballet companies. You're now the principal dancer with the Royal Ballet. I'm going to ask you 3 quick questions because I'd like to turn it over so we can get a couple of others. But you know, what would you say your most memorable performance was so far?
Well, I think the most memorable one was probably when I was still a soloist, and I got to dance at the prestigious Paris Opera Ballet, which was a really big deal. It's a very hardcore audience, you know, ballet is in the DNA of the French. And I remember having my mom be able to be there as well. Unfortunately, my parents haven't been able to be at my live shows because they're always traveling or at their work, so it's kind of been the story of my life. But it was a lot of pressure having my mom there, you know, being in the Paris Opera stage, performing Corsair, and just remember being so relieved at the end of the performance. Yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant. Tommy, I don't know if we have any, I can't see the questions, but if you've got any, let's have a look. Oh gosh, I can't read that. Wow. Story, your performance is just so authentic. Do you have any, the question there is, do you have any upcoming shows, any live shows that you anticipate?
Man, a few got canceled, so I don't know yet. I can't say, but definitely as things open up, I will be planning some. So if people want to find out, sign up to my email list on my website at STORRY Music, stories with 2 R's, STORRY music.com, and I'll be posting about the shows that I'm going to be doing because I am craving to perform live, so 100% they're going to happen soon.
There you go. You've heard it from the source. There's a question there about who the name of the pianist was. Now, we saw 2 of them, actually. So maybe Sarah and Cecilia, you had a pianist there?
Yes, she's amazing. Her name is Laura Dodds-Eden. She is Australian, but was in London and then was in Canada for quite a few years, and so we actually just didn't cross over in Toronto at all. And then now she's moved back to London, and I happened to find her at Cecilia's suggestion, and I think she's incredible, and she completely smashed that performance.
She sure did. She sure did. But You, Story, also had a pianist in your performance.
Yes, my buddy Tom, I call him, but his name's Yotam Baum, and he is actually the co-writer of the whole album with me, Chapter 3, The Come Up. And he actually studied in Cambridge as well, so.
A lot of the other comments that we're seeing here are recognition and thank yous, et cetera. Just, I think people are really enjoying what they're hearing from you guys. I want to turn it back to you, if I could, Cesar, for a moment. I also read that you would love to play Spartacus one day. Is this your dream performance?
I think it definitely is. I think, you know, in a dancer's career, there are, you know, stages, and I think soon enough, I think I'll be in the stage where hopefully, you know, the body will completely develop, all the muscles will be there in a way, and just have that heaviness and be able to perform something like Spartacus at the Bolshoi. This would be an ultimate goal for me.
Wow, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
And we'd all like to be there, of course, if we could. One of 3 or 4 performances perhaps that night with all of you there, that would be good. We'll be in the audience. And is Swan Lake your next performance?
Yeah, hopefully, if it doesn't get canceled. I think it was a week before we went into lockdown. I was supposed to make my debut in Swan Lake, and I think we're aiming to perform Swan Lake next season. So fingers crossed.
Yes, fingers crossed, all of us. So we are coming to a close. On behalf of everyone who has joined us today, on my behalf, Canada-UK Foundation, Canada-United Kingdom Chamber of Commerce, listen, thank you guys so much. We all look forward to seeing your careers go from strength to strength over the next weeks, months, years. We will be following you for sure. Before we close, just a few thank yous. First of all, thank you to the Canada House staff. You've been amazing. You've made us very welcome, all of us here today. We're grateful. Thanks to our patron, again, His Excellency Ralph Goodale, and to our staff liaisons for today, Simon Anderson and Sylvie. Tommy, I want to thank you. You've been brilliant on tech here. It's not possible without that, I know. Thanks to Nigel Bacon, CEO of the Canada-UK Chamber, and his colleague Julene, who is in Paris, I think, joining us and helping us, for the event management, for partnering with us on this event. Thanks also to my Canada-UK colleagues. Without the incredible Wanda Hamilton and Hasna Bloor, who are actually with us here in the room today, the idea for this wouldn't have been possible, far less the execution. You guys are tireless and you're amazing. I know all of us want to thank you. I just want to give you a round of applause. Thank you. And finally, thank you to our sponsor, CIBC, for your support. It is amazing that you've been able to support us with this. Thank you so much. And then finally, if you don't already subscribe, little plug here, the Canada-UK, so CanadaUKFoundation.org. We have a weekly newsletter, the Friday Files, largely put together by these ladies that I've mentioned. It is amazing. Your stories have featured in it in recent weeks, you know that. Our Canada-UK, our first Canada-UK Foundation auction is also live right now. It features work from amazing artists, designers and experiences. Check it out if you can. Please be generous. And we would be very grateful if you were. We're going to see you all together again in September when we get back, hopefully, to our regular course of activities. And with that, thank you guys. Thank you, everyone. It's been a great pleasure, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.